Trees take up essential elements dissolved in water through their roots. Each of the essential elements has a specific role in a plant and cannot be replaced by another element. Trees require certain elements known as macronutrients in relatively large quantities. Nitrogen is often the most limiting macronutrient and the one required in the largest quantity. It is a constituent of proteins and chlorophyll and is critical to photosynthesis and other plant processes. Because soil nitrogen, under natural conditions, comes largely from decomposed organic matter, removing leaf litter and other natural sources of nitrogen can disrupt the cycling of nitrogen in the soil. Much of the nitrogen in the soil can be lost due to leaching or volatilization. Nitrogen deficiencies are most common in sandy soils low in organic matter, especially if irrigation is heavy. Nitrogen deficiency becomes noticeable through reduced growth, smaller leaves, and yellowing, chlorosis, of the leaves. However, these symptoms could also be due to a variety of other problems that affect root health and element uptake. Because nitrogen is the element most likely to be deficient in trees, fertilization specifications usually focus on supplementing it. Other macronutrients such as phosphorus, P, potassium, K, and sulfur, S, are also required in relatively large quantities. However, these elements are usually present in adequate amounts in the soil. Secondary nutrients, which are required in moderate quantities, include magnesium, Mg, and calcium, Ca. Magnesium deficiency can be a significant problem in palms. Other elements, known as micronutrients, are required in smaller quantities and may actually be toxic at high levels. Nonetheless, a micronutrient deficiency can have profound effects on tree health. For example, iron chlorosis is a condition that results when trees are not absorbing sufficient quantities of iron, often because the iron in the soil is in a form that roots cannot absorb. Iron deficiency can eventually kill a tree. Like iron, manganese, Mn, and zinc, Zn, may at times be deficient in a tree. Chlorosis symptoms due to manganese deficiency are similar to those of iron deficiency. Trees deficient in zinc may have small leaves and stems that fail to elongate, rosetting. The remaining micronutrients, molybdenum, copper, chlorine, nickel, and boron are less likely to be deficient. Fertilizers are available in many forms and combinations. A complete fertilizer is defined as one that contains nitrogen, N, phosphorus, P, and potassium, K. The fertilizer analysis listed on the container expresses the composition of the fertilizer as a percentage by weight of total nitrogen, N, available phosphoric acid, and soluble potash, always listed in the same order. For example, a fertilizer with an analysis of 10-6-4 contains 10% nitrogen, 6% phosphorus, and 4% potassium. A 50-pound, 23-kilogram bag of this fertilizer would contain 5 pounds, or 2.3 kilograms, of nitrogen, 3 pounds, 1.4 kilograms, of phosphorus, and 2 pounds, 1 kilogram, of potassium. For trees, a complete fertilizer is usually not necessary because nitrogen may be the only limiting element. Fertilizers are available in either an organic or inorganic form. Inorganic fertilizers release their elements relatively quickly when dissolved in water. Available nutrients in the form of inorganic ions are absorbed by oppositely charged sites on the root membrane. These same ions, when in excess concentration, are also responsible for plant burn by raising the osmotic potential of the soil and drawing water out of the roots. Organic fertilizers also release inorganic ions, but more slowly as molecules are hydrolyzed or decomposed in the soil. Organic fertilizers are composed of carbon-based molecules and can be either synthetic or natural. Examples of synthetic organics are urea formaldehyde, UF, and isobutylidene diurea, IBDU. Examples of natural organics are manures, sewage sludge, fish hydrolysates, blood, and bone meal. Roots can absorb most elements only in the form of inorganic ions, whether coming from an organic or inorganic source. One advantage of organic fertilizers is that they must be converted to inorganic ions before absorption. Therefore, they are not leached as readily from the soil. An advantage of inorganic fertilizers is that the solubility is less affected by temperature. Especially for trees, it is desirable to use slow-release fertilizers because they release nutrients, usually nitrogen, over an extended period of time. This reduces the amount of nutrients that may be leached and also reduces salt and fertilizer burn problems. If slow-release fertilizers are used, more nitrogen can be applied at one time. Slow-release fertilizers sometimes have a coating that breaks down slowly to release the inner fertilizer over an extended period of time. An example is sulfur-coated urea. Other slow-release fertilizers are synthetic or natural organics whose release is determined by the carbon structure. Examples are urea formaldehyde, synthetic, or manures, natural. For long-term release of nitrogen, trees should be fertilized with a slowly soluble source of at least 50% of the nitrogen in the form of water-insoluble nitrogen, WIN, and a salt index below 50. The rate that fertilizer should be applied depends on the age, health, and species of the tree, form of the fertilizer, method of application, site conditions, and the goal that you are trying to achieve. Because runoff from nutrient application can have a huge impact on water quality, fertilization has become a controversial subject, and some researchers are beginning to recommend lower rates than what have commonly been used. When the goal is to maintain tree health and supplemental nitrogen is needed, a general recommendation for slow-release fertilizers is 2 to 4 pounds, 1 to 2 kilograms, of actual nitrogen per 1,000 square feet, 100 square meters, of root area. In most cases, fertilizer rates should not exceed 6 pounds, 3 kilograms, per 1,000 square feet, 100 square meters, per year. Quick-release fertilizers should be used only when the objectives of the fertilization cannot be met with slow-release fertilizers. Rates should be between 1 and 3 pounds, half and 1.5 kilograms, of actual nitrogen per 1,000 square feet, 100 square meters, per application, and should not exceed 4 pounds, 2 kilograms, of actual nitrogen annually. If the fertilizer is being broadcast over turf grass, no more than 3 pounds, 1.5 kilograms, of soluble nitrogen per 1,000 square feet, 100 square meters, should be applied to avoid damaging the turf grass. The rates provided here, however, are just general guidelines. The best approach is to create a fertilizer prescription based on foliar, soil, and pH analysis.
I see you. Look.
In surface application, the fertilizer is applied over the soil surface using a spreader, dry formulations, or a sprayer, liquid formulations, calibrated to apply the desired amount of nitrogen per 1,000 square feet, 100 square meters. Depending on the fertilizer type, the area may need to be thoroughly watered following application to dissolve the fertilizer and to wash it off the grass and into the soil. These are some advantages to surface application of fertilizer to trees. It requires the least amount of time for application. It does not require sophisticated equipment. It delivers nitrogen to the upper surface, and if there is enough water applied, it may penetrate into the upper 6 inches, 15 centimeters, of soil where most of the tree's actively absorbing roots are located. A disadvantage of surface application is that it may volatilize or run off to nearby rivers and streams and contaminate the water. Therefore, surface application should not be employed where runoff is a problem. When trees grow in a lawn, turf grass will compete significantly for available nitrogen. Although tree roots may get some benefit, turf roots will outcompete tree roots in absorbing essential minerals. In these cases, some arborists prefer to use one of the subsurface application techniques. Subsurface application is designed to place fertilizer below the majority of the turfgrass roots. Arborists should keep in mind, however, that the majority of the fine absorbing tree roots are located in the upper inches of the soil. The drill hole method uses granular fertilizer. Holes 2 to 4 inches, 5 to 10 centimeters in diameter, spaced 12 to 36 inches, 30 to 91 centimeters apart, are drilled in the soil around the tree in concentric circles or in a grid pattern. It is best to begin the holes several feet out from the trunk to avoid damaging the buttress roots. The holes should extend at least to the drip line. Although property lines, pavement, and buildings often restrict the application area, application should not be compensated in other areas. Fertilizer holes should not be poked or punched into the soil because it causes compaction, glazing around the holes, and may restrict distribution and uptake of the fertilizer. The holes should be 4 to 8 inches, 10 to 20 centimeters, deep, depending on soil type and other site conditions. After the amount of fertilizer required is calculated according to specifications, the fertilizer is uniformly distributed in the holes. The fertilizer should not fill the holes within 2 inches, 5 centimeters, of the surface. The holes might be backfilled with a soil amendment such as compost, peat moss, perlite, crushed stone, pea gravel, or sand. One advantage of drill hole fertilization is the partial aeration of the soil. A third application technique is the liquid injection method. Fertilizer dissolved or suspended in water is injected under hydraulic pressure into the soil using a soil injector. The hole spacing and distribution are the same as with the drill hole method. Often, the factor limiting fertilizer uptake is lack of available water. The advantages of this method are better distribution and uptake of fertilizer because water is injected into the root zone. For liquid injection, the holes should be uniformly distributed within the fertilization area. The concentration and application rates of the solution should be determined based on the required nutrients and rate of application. Because most of the absorbing roots are found in the upper inches of the soil, that's where application should be focused. Click on the play button to see a demonstration of liquid injection application. Both the drill hole method and the liquid injection method of fertilization can lead to dark, vigorous patches of lawn under the tree around each distribution site. Some arborists use subsurface methods in conjunction with broadcast fertilization. This eliminates uneven discoloration in grass and provides the advantages of each application technique. However, the total amount of fertilizer applied should not exceed standard recommendations. Foliar application, another method of fertilization, is sometimes employed to correct minor element deficiencies. For example, chelated iron sprays may be used to provide a rapid, although temporary, treatment of iron chlorosis. However, this method is not efficient for introduction of other essential elements such as nitrogen. Micronutrient spray applications are most effective when made just before a period of active growth. Response time varies, but 1 or 2 applications per year will usually be effective. Not all plant species respond to foliar treatments, though. Because of the possibility of staining, care must be taken around hardscape and other finished surfaces. Implants and injections are two techniques